Welcome to the Spark Connect podcast. Today's episode was a first for me because it's the very first time I've ever had two guests on the podcast at once. And it was so much fun. Joining me are virtual facilitation expert Elan Ressel and voice artist, facilitator, and presenter Marc Chase. And what makes this conversation especially cool is that it's truly global. We're connecting across continents to talk about something we all care deeply about: how to create genuine human connection online. In this episode, we explore virtual presence, camera engagement, authenticity, storytelling, and the artistry behind online facilitation. Marc shares incredible insights from his background in voice and performance, while Elan brings such thoughtful expertise around production, preparation, and creating meaningful virtual experiences. We also get into practical techniques, like why looking directly into the camera matters so much, how your environment can help build trust and connection, and what it really takes to make people feel seen in virtual spaces. This conversation is warm, insightful, practical, and delightfully human. And honestly, having the three of us together felt a little bit like sitting in on a really great international coffee chat about facilitation and presence. And now, my conversation with Marc Chase and Elan Ressel. All right, here we are. This is such an exciting day because this is the very first time I get to have two guests on the Spark Connect today. And I couldn't be more excited about it because it's so cool. And also, these two guys are so cool. So without further ado, Marc, Elan, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves, what you do, MeetBee, and how cool that is, other virtual training connection we have, how we got here because of Jonathan Hill. So cool. And also, you're both artists in different ways. And there's a lot that we got to talk about all of this. And y'all, this is going to be great. All right, over to you. Who's first?
Marc, go ahead, please.
Well, Elan, thank you. Well, my name's Marc. As an artist, I'm a voice actor and recently doing some voice of God work. And Kassy will talk about that later, especially when we introduce my newfound friend, Miss Perry. We'll talk about that. And in most recent years, I've been a facilitator and trainer for a company called the Aerial Group out of Boston. And they're focused on the study and the teaching around how we can use our presence together with storytelling to communicate better. And both myself and Elan, we also have a company called MeetBee. What MeetBee does, it streamlines the production tasks associated to delivering high-volume webinars for both online training as well as continuing education. We've been doing it for 6 years now. And overall, that's where we're at. Elan.
You've also forgot to mention where you're situated, Marc. And Marc and I, if you're listening to our accents, we are both South African. I still live in South Africa. I'm living in Johannesburg, South Africa right now. But Marc is in a very cool place in the Czech Republic. He often says it's in the middle of nowhere, like about how far from the Austrian border, in the middle of. You tell more about that. I like how you tell about where you are.
So we always say we're about 120 miles south of Prague, really in the middle of nowhere, a small farm town. When I look outside my window, I see rolling hills and mountains. But when you say cool, you're actually completely right. It's rather a cool temperature environment. We're about 40 minutes east of Germany and about 50 minutes north of Austria, if I'm getting my navigation right. So we're really well centered. An interesting side fact that I heard the other day, because a lot of the time when people think of Czech Republic, they think that it's in Eastern Europe. Well, fun fact that when you look at Prague, for example, Prague is west of Vienna, and everyone considers Austria part of Western Europe.
For sure. Yeah, it's very central. I must say, Marc and I knew each other from Johannesburg days. And just by way of introduction, Kassy, my name is Elan. I'm recently joined started my 5th decade of life just last week. So that's pretty cool. And I live here with my family. Marc and I go back many, many years. And again, I too am a voice artist. I was actually inspired by Marc. I once asked him if he could please coach me. And he said, no. So I said, okay, fine. And so I said, I'll show you one day. And now we are best friends. So, sometimes saying no to someone is not a bad thing.
Well, you
Please
failed
coach
to
me.
add.
No, I'll copy you. Fine. Now we're best friends. Great.
Well,
Yes.
you failed to add, Elan, that it's not that I said, no, I won't coach you. You were in a full-time job at that time, but not any full-time job. You were a full-time job doing and churning out voices for a company. And I said to you, well,
Yes,
you're actually losing out on money and you're losing out on opportunities. So I will coach you once you quit your job, which I don't know if that sounds better than no, but it was, yeah.
What we just heard is an example of what the trainer said and what the participant received. The
That's
trainer
exactly
said
right.
no. Actually, the coach was guiding you to further. Yeah, that's great.
Exactly.
You guys could
So
hear
yeah,
why I wanted you on the show. You two are so cool, and we're so connected. Like this, every. It's like I'm sitting here going, "What question can I ask?" After every sentence each of you say, and then I'm like, "But wait, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another reason we're connected, and that's so cool. Let's talk further about that." And so this is cool. How many times can I say that? Start counting it, everyone who's listening. So, another thing too that's really neat because so you both met in Johannesburg, and so Mark, you end up in the Czech Republic now, though. And how did you get there?
By plane,
Yes. Okay.
it was, it
What's the
was a trip.
story that took you there? Thank you. I deserve that, by the way.
So I was a national television news anchor in South Africa for almost a decade. And it was in about late 2017 when I got word that the TV show I was on was going to get canceled in a few months' time. And I am French by nationality. So when I was in my studio at home back in South Africa, I was just rumbling through my stuff and I found my French passport. I then run through to the living room where my wife was. And I said, you know what? I'm losing my job in about 6 months. How about we reset and move to a different country? And I'm kind of like waving my French passport at her. And she's like, okay, why not? So we then proceeded to literally sell everything we had over the next few months. And when we say everything, we packed everything into 6 suitcases, one which was full of toys. And the way we were able to decide the destination was literally just searching around. We were specifically looking for a destination in Europe. It wasn't Czech Republic initially. It was the island of Malta. For those of you watching, wondering where Malta is, it's an island south of Sicily in the Mediterranean. It is really beautiful, but
very
I would
small.
say 17 by 20 miles in size and really, really tiny. But what it fulfilled were a number of factors. One, it's an English speaking country, as in a national language. It's got 2 languages there, both Maltese and English. We also felt that from a perspective of restarting one's life, you need to start lean because I had no job lined up. I literally had the ability to land and get in legally. That was it. So you want to have a country which is a rather low cost destination, which it was. But we also were very mindful that when you're restarting your life, it's also about restarting the way you see things and your perspective on life. So we came from Johannesburg. Now, Kassy, Johannesburg is very much like any contemporary city across the world, very fast paced. You're always on the move. Going from that to an island where you're going to be moving to a village of 10,000 people, you have to be very conscious and slowing down. In the end, we landed. We had 2 weeks that we booked in a hotel to get our kids into school, to find an apartment, and to figure out what I'm going to do, which kind of lends into, again, back to Elan, who introduced me to this wonderful company called Ariel in the US
Okay.
a few months before I had moved. And that was the opportunity to get into facilitation, which in itself is a great story because when I was losing this opportunity in television, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? I'm a voice actor, I'm a TV presenter. And Elan was saying, well, there's this company called the Ariel Group who focus on training C-suite executives and presence and storytelling skills. And I was not making the connection. I said, well, why would they want a TV news anchor to do this? And they said, well, it focuses on your natural storytelling ability and your ability to communicate, especially when you're thinking about the looking towards camera and how to use the camera effectively. So that really was perhaps the bridge in knowing that I had something going for me moving forward. And I just never knew where it would take me after
Yeah.
that. I think in today's world, we kind of focus on being present, not necessarily only about the visual or physical presence, but also the best opportunity for living right now is living for now. So that's kind of where we're at. And then in 2020, during COVID, we decided to make another move and we moved to Czech Republic, both
Okay.
sight unseen. I can
Okay.
recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, I want to go. Elan, have you been to see him in the Czech Republic?
Yes, I have. I went there a couple of years ago. I was doing a bit of a whirlwind European tour, and it was very quick, but it was beautiful. I'm very happy where I am right now too. But I have to tell you that it's both Malta and Czech Republic are beautiful places, and I have also lived over in California for a couple of years when I was much younger. So I'm all for big adventure and looking at different things. And I have to say, the one thing that's cool about like the kind of work that we do, and anyone who's involved in this sort of space of virtual facilitation, is that it's not your normal work day, right? Because you get to connect with people from all over the world. Here we are on 3 different continents having this chat as if we're sitting in the living room here by the fireplace and just having a chat. And it's kind of weird that I said once to one of my colleagues, I said, I feel like I'm a dual citizen. Mark is a dual citizen, but I feel like I'm a dual citizen. I'm a citizen of my country where I live, but I'm also a citizen of the internet. And the
Yes.
beautiful part about that is that there's no borders. I was chatting with people all throughout Europe this morning in a session that I was facilitating, and now I'm here with you. And it's who knows what's going to happen tomorrow and where the next person's going to come into the room.
So
And it's
wonderful, isn't it?
global perspective on things. That's one of the things I love most about what we do.
I know. I know. We just have this opportunity to meet people who are doing different things. Maybe they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it in different ways. And it's just, what's better than that? It's so interesting. I have the advantage of seeing these guys. If you're just listening in, you should check out the YouTube, because then you'll be able to see what I'm about to ask Elan. But you got something hanging over your shoulder right there, Elan. So we talk about being voice actors, but there's something else
What
going
about
on
this?
your shoulder. What you got back there?
My guitar? Yeah,
You got a
this
guitar
is
back there. It's a fancy looking one.
I have 5 guitars in my house, right? And I don't really play any of them. This one was my grandfather's guitar. He was a professional guitarist, and my aunt is a professional singer. So it's in the blood. And I thought maybe I could pick up the mantle and do that. But after 2 years of practicing and still being able to just do like a C, F, and a G, I've decided that is there as a reminder that you can't be good at everything, Kassy. So
Okay.
so be it. When you get to the ripe old age of 50, halfway there, right? You kind of go, yeah, there's some things I'm going to be good at and other things that I'm not, and I'm okay
Yeah,
with
I'm not
that.
even getting mad about it. I do feel that way too, and in that age of my life as well. Like, that's good. I'm happy for those that are good at the other things. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly.
One of the things that I heard you say just a second ago, Mark, and I'd love for both of you to comment in on this. I have a question all the time that comes up as I'm helping people become better at virtual facilitation and presenting, particularly online. It's about camera presence, and most specifically, it's about making it look like you're looking in. Well, let me not say that. Making it look like you're looking at them, but then not falling into lecture mode and not falling into having to memorize a monologue. Like, how do you balance all these things and make it be as natural as possible so that people really feel like I am speaking to you and I am actually looking at you?
Yeah, Mark, you want to go
Such a good
first?
question. Yeah, it's such a good question, Kassy, because what we're doing right now is demonstrating best practice, where when we're communicating back, we're looking into the camera. And it's only because we know that from the audience's perspective, for us looking into the camera, it's them thinking we're looking directly at them, which we then understand improves engagement. And one of the big subjects that's always been a contentious one, especially COVID and post-COVID, was the virtual environment. The virtual training environment is not as engaging. It's not as riveting as being in person. I experienced in-person facilitation after doing virtual facilitation, which is very different to most of the journeys of trainers. Most trainers are starting in the
Let's just
classroom.
note that for a second. I knew this was coming. This day is finally here, where we have people who became facilitators online. They never
Yeah.
facilitated in person. And so the concept of facilitation in person is something that's found after having already been online. And it's like, I'm so excited that day is here, because everyone always had comments about, well, here's what we did in person, and now that we're online, here's what we'll do. And it's so fascinating. The longer we go, the more this is real. And it is the case for both of you. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think to continue on that thought, that if you've come from in-person facilitation and now you move towards virtual, you'll have your best practices taken to the virtual space. For better or for worse, there'll be different perspectives. And similarly, if you've come from virtual then to in-person, there are a whole bunch of different considerations. I myself struggled with anxiety being in a room full of people, as opposed to just seeing a bunch of video screens. And again, my whole career has always been in studio. So technically, I've always been virtual. If you're in a voice booth or if you're in a TV studio, you're always separated. You're not really in person from that perspective. to get on that thought around why I think it's so important to stress the fact that when it comes to engagement, as I was mentioning, that it's been always this contentious issue amongst a lot of L&D leaders. They're thinking, why should I pursue or maintain a virtual facilitation path when some people aren't that necessarily that happy about it? But there are certain techniques and skills that you, Kassy, and you, Elan, and myself know very well, which push the needle in interest in having someone drop that switch tasking and focusing on their email and then back to the call and focus on the call based on certain fundamentals. The
Yeah.
way we communicate, the way
Yeah.
we look in camera, the way we framed ourselves, and then being mindful that this is still a personal space. When you're speaking, Kassy, I look back at I look back at my screen and I look at you. And this is the thing, right? Because a lot of trainers, like participants and attendees, aren't comfortable with looking into the camera. So they're always looking down like this, like, hi, everybody, welcome. Not quite realizing that it actually potentially signals to that participant that you may be multitasking, that you're not
Right.
actually focused on them. So it needs to be very intentional, the way you're looking into the camera and then looking back at the screen and then looking back at camera.
Have you picked up other language since you've been there? Like, what do they speak in Czech Republic? Is it
Czech.
they speak?
Goodness. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I have lived here almost 6 years and still can only say a few words in Czech. A
Yeah.
few words like hello, goodbye, please. I'm sorry, I'm English speaking. That's
I
about
know.
it. It's just such a tough language because Czech has been likened to being almost like the Mandarin of Europe. It is a very complicated language. I think there are about 250,000 words that are regularly used in the language. So when you think about the extent of how much you would have to learn, it is a lot. And
Just
on
very
top of that,
certain amount. Because you start thinking about the combination of those 250,000 words.
yeah, it really is a lot. In fact, when you also take into consideration the way Czechs learn Czech, it's a very specific language in terms of how you pronounce things, the accent, all these elements. So it's either right or it's wrong. And because of that, when even we try to say a few words, a lot of Czech people wouldn't actually understand what you're saying because they're not expecting to hear it in that form of tone register and accent, that kind of thing. So it is you have to be perhaps working in a regular environment. Since I work online and remotely most of the time, I'm not involved in a day-to-day basis working with Czech people. So in that way, it doesn't help in learning the language. But in saying that, it's become far easier over the years where more and more people do speak English. So we never feel like we have to take out our phones and go and use Google Translate,
So
only
that's
for like
good. Yeah.
complicated things.
What about the kids? Do the kids have they picked it up? Like, where do they go to school in terms of language? And what have they picked up?
Well, they go to a British school. So even from their perspective, they're not going to Czech state school. So they don't really have Czech either. So yeah, they're very much global citizens, as Elan was saying earlier.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you're still working for the Aerial Group on top of running MeetBee, correct?
Absolutely. I think that it's something where I think you can appreciate this as a trainer as well, is that those type of skills to be able to I mean, I enjoy it. I think that's perhaps the big thing out of it. I built MeetBee because we saw a market opportunity that you need to provide an enterprise level support option or opportunity for companies that deliver a lot of training programs to have the consistency and the certainty and the service level agreements around supporting virtual training programs. And when you look at the online training perspective, there's a number of factors. As facilitators, we're very mindful in making sure that that a presenter, the facilitator, can focus on their content and their participants while there's someone focusing on everything else.
Mhm.
And, I think that when we spoke earlier about the aspect around engagement, that's another factor, the technical issues. And I think for those facilitators who are watching or listening to this podcast, you'll find that you've had these scenarios where you felt that everyone was incredibly engaged. And then they get to that moment, especially if you're using certain programs. Not every set program is like Zoom. I mean, there are other more challenging programs like Microsoft Teams, for example, where you now have to hold the bus and say, hold on, everybody, I'm not going to go into my settings and make breakout rooms, just stand by. And it's just those moments of disconnect, which takes away the engagement and the
Yeah, it
curiosity from
absolutely
the
does.
participants. So that is why we had largely started MeetBee. Over the years, what we realized is that while online training was one industry vertical we were focused on, it was one of them. What we realized, though, is that it was the continuing education side, which is focused on your CPAs and which is the chartered professionals, certified professional accountants who have to get CPE certifications, similar to the medical professionals and CME, or the legal professionals and CLE, and so on. That was actually one of those post-COVID effects, because more and more professionals realized it was easier to hop onto a webinar, watch a webinar for a few hours being presented by an expert, and then get their CPE credits. And what we also identified through that is that those companies who deliver a lot of these webinars, they've got a huge lift when it comes to the production aspect around that. And
Right.
remember, they were always actually focused on content. So what they were really dealing with is now having this production department that's now been sprung on them post-COVID, having to deliver all these webinars, and
Right.
really stretching themselves thin in how to develop and expand their content opportunities for new webinars, while dealing with what is in effect a limited resource in production delivery. And that's where we largely fill the gap. So we say, well, as a CPE company, why don't you still focus as being a content development company, while offshoring or having those managed services of those production tasks taken over by a company like MeetBee, so you can focus on what's most important for your business, while we focus on really making sure in a scalable type of way that the production can be done with however many webinars you plan to deliver, which I think was
Very interesting. I want to talk about that. People struggle looking into the camera all the time, and they end up making it feel like it's fake, or that then they all of a sudden turn into a monologue, or then they just drop into lecture because they feel like, I'm not allowed to look away from the camera and I need to look at the chat. And now I just ruined everything. And so there's a lot of coaching that goes around all of that. That we were talking about. And Elan, I'm curious how it is for you. You're like, I know, Marc, you come from always having been in a studio, but Elan, how did it come about for you? And what's your sort of practice around looking into the camera and then looking at the real people too?
Well, I think this has been a topic for more than 10 years, right? That we've all been talking, because I get asked this all the time. Like, where do I look? Do I look at the people? Do I look at the camera? I said, if you had to know the number of senior executives that I've been coaching over the years to tell them where to look so that they could see the people that they're talking to, it's not, this affects people all over the world. And I think, unlike Marc, I didn't come from having had cameras on me. I wanted to be a voice artist because I liked using my voice and I didn't want people to see me. So this environment is very uncomfortable for me. So I just wanted to be hidden, right? And I was fortunate, I guess, to learn from people that were really good at it. And one of the things that sort of changed my mind about this, they said, look, that little green dot at the top of your screen, that's the webcam, that's the eyes of your audience. The good news is you only have to really keep focused on that one dot. You don't have to, if you've got an audience of 10,000 people, you can talk to them all just by looking into that one place. So that gave me a little bit of like, oh, well, actually, that's an advantage, really, compared to having to stand in front of a group of people and seeing all these eyeballs on you. It feels a little bit more intense, especially if you come from my background. And I think, I've over the years been coaching and teaching people, not just my clients or the people that come to me for that coaching or facilitation, but also the people within our company. We've had to teach them how to have great presence on camera, on webcams and things. And I think the key thing is to remember, and I joke about this, I say, look, when you meet somebody at having a little cocktail party or something, you go, hello, Kassy, nice to meet you. You look into their eyes a little bit. You might look at what they're wearing and things like that a little bit. And, if I had to do the same, come to you in the cocktail party and be like, hi, Kassy, how are you? What's going on? How's the party? Are you enjoying yourself? You think, who's this creepy guy, right? I'm like getting the icks just like thinking about it. And so much like I'm doing now, if you think about something, you look away a little bit, but you just remember that those are the eyes where you come back to. And so that's the thing that really helped me feel more comfortable with it, in that I'm just having a conversation, but I just have to be a little bit more mindful that, if I have two screens, and I see people do this all the time, they'll have this very impassioned talk to me like this, and I'll say, you have a second screen, don't you? And they go, how did you know? And I'm like, because you're not looking at me. You're looking at me on the video and I'm looking at you, but you're not looking at me. My eyes are here. And so it's kind of that's what really helps me. And I have to tell you a funny thing that my wife did. I used to have it on my desk over here. She got, those googly eyes that you would like from a craft store. You'd go to a craft store and pick up a bag of little eyes. My wife likes decorating the house with them now. She puts them on the grandfather clock, on the guitar and things. And She said what really helped her was putting them on either side of the webcam on a computer. So she
Love it.
said, well, those are the eyes of my audience. I got to just remember that, that's who I'm trying to connect with. So I hope that helps. If anybody uses that, be my guest. It really worked for me and
Guys,
for my
I'm going to
wife.
put some googly eyes on
Get
my
the googly
camera
eyes. Yeah.
today's the day.
If I can add just a quick thought around what Elan was saying, and I think, what are we all trying to do here? In a virtual environment, especially if you have no opportunity to meet that individual or those individuals in person, we're trying to foster trust and authenticity. That's really what we're trying to do. And one factor is looking into the camera. But all these references that we speak of is, how are we able to build a relationship with someone who would perhaps believe, or even from a perspective of, let's say, our company, want to work with our company, not having ever met these individuals who are halfway across the world in the middle of their respective nowheres. And this is why we're so mindful around, I think, the importance and the power of presence and looking into the camera. I think when Elan was making that reference of looking at the second monitor, I think it doesn't push the needle if you were going into a sales call by communicating that way. And for those who aren't aware of that, perhaps now just only seeing poor results, they may be scratching their head saying, why is that not working for me? And it could be something as simple as not looking there, but looking here, which can make all the difference. That's just one consideration.
So tell me this. So it's one thing when you are on camera and you're presenting, maybe you're making videos, maybe you're the main keynote speaker. Of course, you're going to be very camera focused. Let's take it into the interactive and collaborative virtual instructor-led training, workshop, or team meeting. Let's say that too, where not only are you going to have moments where you present content and you're connecting with people, but you need to look at the chat and respond to what's happening in the chat. You need to use the whiteboard, respond what's happening there, launch the poll, do the break. I got to do all the things. So now how do we manage staring into the camera like I'm doing right now as I'm speaking to you, but also all the other features that are part of what personally I believe level up engagement in the virtual environment? How do we manage that? Elan, what is your take on that?
Okay, well, I think that there's a couple of different factors. One is virtual meetings need a little bit more pre-planning. You need to know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, right? And you can't just wing it as much, because it makes you look unprofessional and it makes you look disorganized. So that's the first thing. The second thing is,
add that
even though
we can't wing as much in person as we think we do as well.
No,
I think we need to rehearse and
exactly.
plan more in person than we do.
You are right.
Once again, online is holding us more accountable. Like, I would always be better. But anyway, just had to drop that
No,
little.
you such a pearl of wisdom there. And I think that the second thing is, Mark and I, when Mark wanted to get into facilitating, because I was doing it before him, and he said, oh, I really want to do this facilitating. I said, you know what you should do, Mark? You should learn how to become a producer first. And he's like, no, but I want to do this facilitating. I'm on camera and everything. I said, I hear you. But, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes to make you look good in front of the camera. And it's really a worthwhile skill to develop. Let me teach you that, and I will then show you how to, do the facilitation. That you'll get easily. And so when we did that, and he now has these two skill sets, and suddenly he makes himself, first of all, a lot more marketable, and secondly, it's something that he now knows how to do things, all those things in the background. It's difficult when you're working on different platforms, but if you know what to do, you know where to find the tools and things, like you said, the whiteboard, the polls, the breakouts. Here's my big thing. Just because you can do something does not mean you should do something. And that was a big aha for me. And so even though I can probably produce my own sessions, it's going to stress me out. I'm never going to be as 100% focused as I should be on the participants and on the content if I'm constantly thinking, who was in the previous breakout? Were they together? Did I launch that poll? All these things are best handled by somebody who is focusing and has the role of being a producer. And I think that that's something that we've tried over the years to try and uplift and elevate into becoming a career. And many people that we know now and have trained up have become career virtual producers. I'm very proud of that. And I think that it's something that we should, as I said, if you think you can do it all yourself, that you're probably not coming across in the way that you think you are. Best leave it to someone who can do it in the background and make you look good.
I believe it too, because I had to write a book about it. I love the producers too. And I'm also, though, a presenter and facilitator who does not give it up. Like, I work in partnership. And so you're never going to hear me be like, what? I can't read the chat. Mark, will you please review the chat for me? No, 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 no. I've got it and I'm looking at it and I'm responding to it. I just know that I do not need to worry about it because my producer is managing it and making sure it's working. But I can
Yes.
use it and I'm going to use it to inform what I'm doing, which is where this gets into a tricky space about like when do I look at the camera and when do I look at the chat and how do I use, I know Mark's like, let me
Yeah, I'm kind of like digging on
He's
this.
ready. He's
You know, because that's your original question is like, how do you manage this? And as Elan, I think, very wonderfully role played the stalker look when it comes to a party, and we obviously don't communicate like that. You know, we don't gawk at people. We look, and then we like look away, we look back, and similarly, the practice in a virtual environment is like that. You know, I often say to people I'm training, well, you're looking into the camera, but sometimes you're kind of like thinking up a thought and you perhaps go back to the camera, or you, let's say, looking at the visuals and you're looking at the different windows of the participants saying, oh, Elan, I'm seeing that, you know, that's kind of really, it seems to be engaging you. What are you thinking around that?
Mm.
So looking into the camera is also about the ability of using the periphery vision, but also not being afraid to look away. And I think to add a very important consideration is that it also signals to the audience that when they are talking, you're looking down at them, and then they can see that you're not always looking at the screen. They can tell that you're looking at them. If you look at some of the more, I would say, contemporary news anchors on television these days, and the more, I would say, empathetic ones, don't look at camera when they're doing a shot to someone outside their studio and they're, let's say, communicating from home or from a scene somewhere else. They're talking back to them. They're looking at their monitor,
Yeah.
watching them speak, and then coming back to make their point.
Right.
To be so much more human to do, while the traditional approach was back in the day, just look at the camera 24/7, at least from a news anchor perspective. I think the big TLDR from this is when you're thinking of utilizing your tools, it's actually so much more specific. It's saying, right, everybody, I'm going to open up my whiteboard now. And it actually becomes a prop. My screen is a prop because you can see that I'm now looking at my whiteboard. I have not signaled to your mind that I'm looking at my screen the whole time.
I love this so much. It's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? You know, like what kind of experience do you want people to have? And I learned a whole lot. Several years ago, I attended a conference where Steve Burns, who was the original actor for a TV show, kids TV show called Blue's Clues, was the keynote. And I learned so much from him because he spent 7 years in a swimming pool by himself with an entirely digital set. And I became best friends with his camera lens. And so if you watch some of those original shows and the many offshoots of that show and the style of it, it's incredible what the camera work that he did and that we can learn from when we are here. One of the biggest ones being depth. For me, I like Steve Burns will come close and say, hey, I got to do something. And then he'll move it back and he'll be like, let's do this. Look at this over here, you know? And it's just, it's just great to play. And I think that when we talk about looking at a whiteboard now, or let's go to the chat, you know, imagine yourself as Steve, but then come back and be like, what did we learn in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
And
I
now
really
let's look at it.
I want to throw a great phrase out there that I learned some time ago, and I really use it a lot. And we have to be mindful of, especially when you're on a camera, when you've got things, because there's a lot of things outside of this frame that you can't see, right? And the phrase was, name it and claim it. So, and I think that's what you were referring to about what Steve did with Blue's Clues. Like he was like, let's go over here, right? And he would tell the kids like this is what's going on. So when like Mark said, let's tell you what, everyone, let's go to the whiteboard, or I'm going to read a couple of your comments. I'm going to ask Mark and then Kassy something. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through some of the comments that you're all making into the chat. Please continue typing in the chat. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And then, you know, so I'm engaging both the people on camera and let's face it, there's a lot of introverts also that don't like to be on camera and to talk. And they'll go on there. And then you recognize it. You say, so you name it and claim it. What it means is sometimes I'll like say, you made a really good point there, Kassy. I'm gonna write that down in my book. Now I didn't have to say I'm gonna write that down in my book, but if you see me looking down here, you might think that I'm playing on my phone if you couldn't see my hand, right? So by announcing what it is that you're doing, it really just gives people a greater sense of comfort, and I feel that it makes it more authentic, and that's a great way to be able to let everybody realize, of course, as we all know, there's things going on outside of this frame over
It's
here.
so
Well,
nuanced too.
I
I
think
love
there's
it. It's like
two
you
name it and claim it.
identify the space, right? Because people don't understand the space and they're not necessarily in the exact space. And the space that we're all in together is a bit unknown. And so how can we help them be in that space in a way that feels more comfortable and known? But I do have to say we can overboard that.
I think this is the thing. There are two name it and claim it elements that I would not name and claim. And it's something that we hear at almost at the beginning of every virtual meeting we attend, which is if you're be presenting, don't arrive on time. I remember at the very beginning of my career, when I was trying to get into voice acting, and I met perhaps in the top 3 voice actors in South Africa. And I went up to him. It was at a kind of a social gathering. And I said to him, what should I do? What should I learn so I can become a great voice actor like you? First, he kind of looks at me and with his cigarette, and he goes, smoke 20 filter cigarettes every single day. Right? Well, that's what he said. But then he gives me the pearls of wisdom, which was early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. And I've held that my entire career. I've always done, because firstly, human emotion is so psychological, as we know. And if others have to wait for you, no matter how good you are, it's not going to go well. That's one. But similarly, when it comes to preparation from a virtual perspective, if your session's at the top of the hour, make sure you're there at least 15 minutes earlier. If you're the one presenting, to make sure that you have someone else in the call, such as a producer, who can check for you that your video is in fact working.
That's when you ask that question. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Is the presentation there? Let's try my
Exactly.
different. Are they all working? Because again, when we make that reference of why is virtual facilitation or virtual interaction seen not as great as the in-person, it comes down to preparation. If it's smooth, if we take the same principles when it comes to high value production in terms of just a basic meeting or a basic training session, you will notice a difference. You will notice an effect in the results you get. Participants.
Question on this though, because here's some realities for my listeners. I know you're all thinking it and feeling it. I just feel you out there. Wait, I am a corporate trainer. I work every day in my office delivering training. I do not have a producer, and we do not have time or resources for someone to be tech checking every single training session I open.
What do you do in that situation?
I think it's as simple as having even a colleague just going, well, if I want to check my audio, my video, and my presentation, a colleague can confirm with me about that too. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need a producer for that. And when it comes to training design, if you're going to be facilitating solo and you don't have anyone to support you there, well, then make sure you set yourself up for success without using some perhaps engagement elements in that program that might not work as well. I mean, we were talking earlier about Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Teams is very challenging for a training environment. I think a lot of folks out there don't necessarily realize that the participants who are arriving for your training session may all look like they're Teams users, but they may be personal Teams users as opposed to having a work or school account, which means they won't be able to necessarily join a breakout that you're looking to create. So what is your plan for that scenario? You'll only realize that at the moment of panic when you're trying to set up a breakout and you're noticing that Teams is just kindly saying to you, this person cannot attend a breakout, but they're not telling you why. But make sure you set your program out in such a way that you've got flexibility, that what is your backup plan on backup plan? I mean, sometimes a simple backup plan is telling folks going, right, well, listen, we can't get you into a breakout, but it's a 30-minute breakout. Call each other on Teams.
Yeah,
right?
that was old school. Like before breakouts existed, that's what we did. I was like, everyone, please exchange numbers.
Exchange. Or if there's two who have a problem, we'll use plenary for that. But you need to have always that plan, those like, what if this happens, if that happens? Because I think the thing that drains the energy from anything is when you're like, hold on, and you like lose that role and you now
Right.
not in control and you're trying to figure out what to do. And everyone's looking at you going, well, listen, I'm the participant here, buddy.
Yeah,
I
you
can't
don't know, we don't know. We're following you, man. Yeah.
Exactly.
that strips the energy. I mean, it's a very special place, the training environment, and it needs to
And
remain
you
that
know what
way.
I've done when I'm by myself and if I'm running a training all day and the next day and the next day and I'm in a corporate setting, it's not a formal webinar. It's not a hired paid gig, it's different. It's your job every single day. You got to run the meeting. What I have done is I will always have a second computer logged in as an attendee so I can see at least the view of what's working. And I'll do an audio by doing a quick recording of myself. And then I'll go back and watch the recording and be like, oh, wow, that does sound weird. Or let me change the volume here. And then, I'm opening early. I love what you gave us. Early is on
And
time is
time,
late, and late is unacceptable. That's a,
Unacceptable.
I love that. Thank you for sharing what he shared with you, the smoking man. I love it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think he did a few
The
of
Mar-
those commercials back in the day.
there's
the
prep
Marlboro
all
Man.
and I think the hard part for people is recognizing that they don't know exactly what the list of things that they should be prepared for is, because trainers and speakers, we are the talent, and we are used to showing up and performing the content in whatever way and at varying levels. But what we are not used to, and what happened when we went online and is required of us, is to become the production team, and also to
Mhm.
become like not only the architect, the developer, the builder, and the production team and the support team as soon as you went live.
True.
Like, to tell people in the beginning, I'm like, did anyone here design this room that we're in? Did anyone here actually put the brick and mortar in place? Did anyone wire it up? Is anyone here responsible for the wonderful HVAC that's keeping us warm or cool? Nobody.
Uh-huh.
Not a single person was ever responsible for that. But when we went online, we're essentially
Doing all that.
responsible. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that, and I think what you said is 100% correct. One of the easy wins that I think that I'd like to give everybody as something. One is we've talked a lot about looking into the camera and how you look and where you look and making people feel comfortable that way. I think the other thing is also, you mentioned it earlier, Kassy, is just proximity. Because we're the cameraman too, right? And the camera is
Yeah.
very fixed. And so you do get those cameras that follow you as, around and everything and sort of keep you centered. I don't know. It kind of works sometimes, but I think more importantly than keeping you centered is when I see people sitting like here, they're just sitting a little bit too far back for my liking. It puts us especially like, I call it like the rule of 3 fingers, right? So I put 3 fingers on top of my head, and that's how much space I should have between my head and the top frame over here. If I've got less, it means I'm probably too close. I'm a little bit too interested. And if I've got too much space, it means I'm not interested enough. And that it's a slight movement in your chair, but I just think you want to frame yourself in a way that allows people to not just hear your voice, but see the full features and gestures of your face. It also gives you enough space to use your hands. So I would say don't sit like this and just talk the entire time. I'm sure nobody who's watching this is doing something like that, but it gets boring. Your hands tell a story too, and your face tells a story. So use them. And part of knowing where your borders are over here of your frame is useful.
And the
So
thing
don't
is,
forget about the space and that space there.
And the thing about what Elan's referencing is that if you frame yourself properly, you're also much more mindful in terms of what I think is some of the most valuable real estate in the world, which is your video frame. And when you think of it like that, you're able to use that as an opportunity of relationship building for something that someone can spot that can push the needle in building that relationship or that opportunity. And I think about this, that it was a few months ago. We were in a sales call, brand new potential client that we were communicating with. And within 2-3 minutes, this individual we were meeting, they look at Elan and they say, Elan, is that a picture of a Labrador in your background? And they're like, oh my, yes, it is. And she then speaks about her Labradors. And for the next 15-20 minutes, they just talk about dogs. I just sit back and I know that this is a perfect call. Whatever we talk about afterwards, it'll be far easier to communicate about, and there'll be far more engagement and recollection from her than ever before through that opportunity. Similarly, there was the other day, I'm a huge Formula One fan, and we were having a town hall meeting, and the one sales head that was in this call, I was looking at his background. I'm saying, that's a little kind of model Formula One, like a Ferrari racing car behind him. And I wrote that in the chat because we didn't have an opportunity to speak at the town hall. And it totally changed everything. It was like, oh my, yes, I can't believe you spotted that. So when we talk about framing, it's part of the project, but you should also be mindful in what would you like an audience or an individual to know of you without you having to say anything. Because we don't necessarily go, well, hi, Kassy, my name is Marc, and I'm really into music, as you can tell by my DJ setup over there. Can you see the record? Can you see? It's trying to tell you something, Kassy.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We put that there as an opportunity to potentially break the ice. And it does break the ice because so many individuals, when we meet, are going to be professional about things. There's countless stories I remember of identifying something in someone's background. I had noticed someone who had a set of comic books. Next 30 minutes, he was talking about his comic book collection and how much he enjoys that. And it
Yeah.
just changed the environment. Someone else had an oar, for rowing on
It's
his
such a
wall.
great tip, but just have a little thing that says who you are, because it's not like we can do that in person. It's another one of those places where this is a unique benefit of being online. We can have
Exactly.
little things around us that indicate who we are without us having to wear a t-shirt that says, I love collecting mid-century modern furniture. You
Exactly. Oh, tell me more about your Labubus.
Yeah, or the labubu. There's a labubu hiding on my neck. It's true. So I have, as we wrap up, I have a question for each of you. I want to connect it to the artistry. So as the artist performer that you are, we'll start with Elan and then Marc, you'll close us on out. Okay. What's one thing that you could teach us, Elan, from your artistic personhood, if you will, about how that would help us be better presenting online or being a virtual speaker or trainer?
I would say, I don't know where I heard the statistic, but I read once that the camera dampens your expressiveness by 30%. And so what it means for us as people who are presenting or who are talking online, we can afford to be a little bit more expressive, and our audience will not perceive us to be too much, like over the top. I mean, I can go way Jim Carrey level over the top if I choose to. I will always keep it within normal kind of range, but I know that I can afford, because the camera is dampening my expressiveness, I can go a little bit more. And if you think that, and I have this happen a lot of the time when people go, oh, I thought I was being expressive. I'm like, no, you were being a little bit boring. In fact, if I had to give you a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like your maximum and 1 being your, and asleep at the wheel, where would you rate yourself? Everyone always says 7. I don't know what it is. They always go, I'm about a 7. I'm like, no, you're about a 4, right? And that's not that they're being a 4. That's what the camera does. It dampens it. So be rest assured that you can be a little bit more expressive, and it will make it more interesting and more exciting for your audience to listen to you, and your message will cut through the noise and land.
Love that. Excellent. Marc.
I would lean into some voice technique. Very often, when we are put into high stress situations, such as presenting, what do we tend to want to do? Get it done as quickly as possible. But what we're really doing is starting to speak incredibly fast. And the faster we speak, the less impact we have. So we want to be mindful and far more intentional in the way we communicate, where when we know that we're put into a high stress scenario, lean into pauses, shorter sentences, and be mindful what you say. Because when we are in panic mode, we tend to put our pedal to the metal. And if we had to think of our mind as a gas tank and our mouth as the accelerator, if we're speaking and we're like hitting it full stick, we're literally emptying out our content, everything that we have. If we're able, intentional moment to pause and to not go flat out and think about the energy crisis like a content crisis and just kind of let off that pedal, it allows that content to work so much more effectively for you. It will be more economical, but you're able to take a beat. And that beat is so important because in the end, if no one knows what you're talking about, they're not going to be engaged.
Right. So in our expressiveness, we can impact the emotional content. We can draw them in. And then by using the pause, or taking a beat, we can allow for people to have a moment to absorb and then ultimately reflect, which will lead to the retention. Right? And so the two of them combined together are such excellent pieces of advice for us presenters. And I was about to say, especially online, but actually scratch that. Everywhere, all the time. All the things that I have found that almost everything that I need to focus on online can be applied in person too. Gosh darn it. So here we are, getting better each and every day as we figure out how to be online, getting better in all the ways. It has been utterly delightful to spend time with the two of you today. I could do it all day, actually. And just to throw it out there, it was super cool. But where can we learn more about what's coming next for each of you and where can we follow what's happening? Elan, where can we connect with you and follow what's happening next? And then Marc.
I think, the Marc is in charge of all of our social media and our website and everything. And he's done an amazing job of making sure that if you can just remember the name MeetBee, you can find us. We're on all the socials. Particularly the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn, or you can just email me at elan@meetbee.com.
Excellent. And Marc.
Yeah, I tend to say, as Elan has mentioned, we did a really great job as a team to make sure we were able to secure perhaps our intellectual space of MeetBee. So whatever your favorite social media platform, at MeetBee, MEETBEE, you'll find us, as simple as that. Marc at meetbee.com if you want to have a communication or a chat. On LinkedIn, of course. And if there's any other place you want to communicate us with, chances are we're there. It was perhaps one of our big takeaways that, as we all know, everyone has their favorite social media channel or space or website. So who are we to decide where people want to go get their content, whether it's Substack or Tumblr?
Love it. Well, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, both of you, Marc, Elan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kassy.
Thank you, Kassy. Thank you.
That's your spark. Now go light something up. And hey, if this episode lit you up, share it with a friend, a fellow facilitator, or someone who needs a little more connection in their day. Be sure to follow the Spark Connect so you don't miss what's next. We've got more brilliant voices, bold ideas, and heart-forward conversations coming your way. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and keep showing up.